Okay.
So, hi all. Today's session is going to be a short one. It's not going to be very intensive. Today's session is going to be about voice user interfaces. So, you'll be most interested in this if you're from a UI UX background and in general, understanding where your users come from and how you can make your website more friendly and available to other users. So, before we get into the meat and potatoes of things, I want to introduce a bit about the company I work for. I work for ValueBound. We're a reputable software development company and we're headquartered in Bangalore, India, but we also have another office in Indore. We have a strong commitment to innovation and technology, and we've established ourselves as a trusted partner for organizations seeking cutting edge solutions. And our solutions are mainly based in Drupal web development. As of now, we are mostly operating with Drupal, but we've also expanded to various other technologies. We have projects in Node.js, Spring Boot, AWS related projects, and also React based UI UX projects. By leveraging our experiences in open source technologies, what we do is we deliver robust and scalable digital experiences that drive business growth. A bit about me. I'll be your speaker today. So my name's Siddharth, and I graduated just last year with a degree in computer science. As of now, I hold the role of software development engineer one, and mainly I work on the Drupal backend. I'm also an active contributor on Drupal.org. And if you want to contact me after the webinar, or if you're interested in getting in touch with me, you can find me. You can find me with my username on Drupal.org, Siddharth_Soman. Along with Drupal, I've also worked on some other technologies as written there below. I'm familiar with JavaScript, vanilla PHP, and also Python-based Flask development. So today's session, for those who just joined, will be focused on voice user interfaces. And before I get into how they're relevant to Drupal, I would just like to take you through what exactly is a voice user interface. So a voice user interface is an interface which allows the user to interact with the system on the basis of voice commands. So as opposed to how a normal interface would usually require buttons, menus, and forms, voice user interfaces take use of speech synthesis and understanding the speech synthesis through machine learning to, to implement whatever command the user wants. So as on the screen over here, I have given 5 main points that are core to the entire concept of voice user interfaces. So speech recognition and natural language processing go hand in hand, you could say. Speech recognition is, you could say, the raw transformation of your speech to actual words. So being able to transcribe what the user says into English language or whichever language the system works in. Natural language processing is more about understanding the meaning of those words. So taking into account the user's tone of voice, what the user means when he uses a specific word, and other more subtle cues like that. So you could say speech recognition is the raw process and natural language processing is the more refined, the more to do with the understanding of the actual command. Then third is voice commands. So how VUIs or voice user interfaces that really work is that there's usually a particular type of grammar defined within the system. So what a grammar is that it basically is comprised of specific commands that are associated with specific processes or tasks. So being able to define a good grammar and being able to define easily understandable prompts for the user is a key component of voice user interfaces. Then there's also responses. So whenever the user has some type of input in the form of speech, what you should ideally do is let the user know that his inputs are being registered or his inputs are being understood. So how this works is that you might have seen whenever you use Netflix or like Amazon, whenever you use the speech programs on that, it actually tracks your speech as you are giving in the commands. So this works as a good reminder to the user that it's a responsive system, and it's a visual aspect that is pretty core to the actual voice user interfaces. Then there's context and personalization. So when you think of context, you can think of ChatGPT if you've used that. And you'll notice ChatGPT actually keeps track of the history of your commands within a particular conversation. And it can personalize your requests to suit what exactly is relevant for that conversation based on your past history. In the same way, voice user interfaces can take into account what you have said before and what commands you've given before, and they can generate the most likely task or the most likely process that you're referring to. So those are the 5 main core components that you could say make up voice user interfaces. Now, getting into how VUIs can influence Drupal. So the thing to understand with Drupal is that for almost all of its lifetime, all of its interface work has been very dependent on the raw HTML, the raw JavaScript commands, and the raw visual components of the actual theme in Drupal. So there isn't a built-in voice user, you could say, there isn't a built-in voice recognition system into Drupal, but there are external libraries and there are external APIs that you can use in conjunction with the main Drupal theming service, which can enable you to use voice recognition on your site. So over here, I've given you three main ways VUIs can influence Drupal. One is content structuring. So those of you who have used Drupal before from a developer perspective, you'll be familiar with the fact that Drupal has a lot of roadways and a lot of pathways that you can take when you're navigating the system. So if you're an admin on the site, let's say, you can go through like a million different menus right when you open the front page. And within those million menus, you can go through another million menus. And all in all, it can be really confusing to a first-time user. So how VUIs influence Drupal in this aspect is that when you're designing a UX, which is implementing VUI, you would want to be able to structure your content in a very easy to understand and a very simple way. You would want a well-defined hierarchy within your website. So in doing this, it can improve the overall accessibility of your website just by taking into account the actual hierarchy. So this is a good point. You always have to make sure your content is structured well. The second is a mobile-first approach. So as you know, on mobiles, they can't fit as much information onto the screen as you can for a desktop. So whenever you're designing for a mobile application, you need to make sure the user has external tools available in order for him to look for something more specific. So implementing a voice user interface into the mobile version of an application can always be helpful. And starting your website development from the mobile first design can help your website in terms of how the content is structured and how accessible the pages of your website are. The third is accessibility. So accessibility refers to making your application a bit easier to use for those with, let's say, visual impairments or motor function disabilities or things of such nature. You want to make sure your website is easy for those. One second. Yeah. You want to make sure your website is easy for such users to use, because you want to make sure your website is accessible for everyone and for all the main functionality of your website to be accessible to everyone. So the next slide is to do with how Drupal theming can be adapted to fit in VUIs. As per the first point, there are three main things you need to take into account. One is streamlining the UI, the second is clear prompts and instructions, and the third is feedback. When I talk about streamlining the UI, you need to make sure the page which is facing the user does not have a lot of clutter or a lot of available commands. You need to make sure that the user is given a clear direction on where they are, first of all, in the application and where they can go to in the application next. Clear prompts and instructions means that there shouldn't be a lot of technical jargon or a lot of technical terminology in the commands itself, and the user should be able to know what exactly they're searching for and what exactly they want from the application. The third is feedback, as I mentioned before. When the user gives any sort of input, they need to be made aware of the fact that their input is being received and the fact that their input is being understood. So incorporating these 3 points together can make for a good VUI-based system, and your Drupal theming system can be adapted as such. The second is multimodal experiences. So multimodal refers to just many modes of giving an input. So obviously there's the visual aspect of it, forms, buttons, and menus. And you can incorporate other types of aspects also to it. So that would include voice, you can have touch, you can have gestures, you can have facial recognition. By having all of these together in a single system, you give the ability to all the users, regardless of their preference, regardless of their disabilities, you give the ability for all of them to enjoy all of your website's capabilities. So this is the main point of multimodal experiences. The third is responsive design. As I mentioned before, starting your website from the mobile first approach can be a good process for making sure your website as a whole is functional and is adapted to various user experiences. Next, I have 6 points of some best practices you need to keep in mind whenever you're using VUIs in Drupal. A best practice can be voice enablement for forms. So forms, as you know, is the main way Drupal takes in input or a particular website takes in input. So enabling voice recognition and speech synthesis on a form can make life easier for your users for input of some data. Second is multilingual support. Sorry, are there any doubts? I heard a microphone. Okay, continuing. So multilingual support means, obviously, if your website is available internationally, you don't want speech recognition to be only English-based. You need to make sure that wherever your website is used, the users can interact with the website in their own language. So that is a best practice to keep in mind. Third is progressive disclosure. So this means that, let's take the example of a website for a shopping mall. A shopping mall has many different functionalities available to it from the onset. So when you enter the website for a shopping mall, you can enter the section for clothing, you can enter the section for restaurants, you can enter the section for electronics, and many other such sections. Only when you enter a particular section would you want the specific options of that section to be available to you. So this means that you don't want to reveal all the cards in your hand once the user enters the website for the first time. You want to make it a streamlined process through which the user can slowly discover more and more about the specific topic they delve into. So that's an important part, and it's also related to streamlining the UI. You don't want a big clutter of commands available from the user from the very get-go. You want them to be able to ease into the specific topics and the specific sections that they want to go into. Then there's usability testing and iteration. So obviously, once you implement a VUI, it works solely on the basis of users and their specific inputs. And by taking their feedback and by making, let's say, an entire data sheet of what commands work, what commands don't work, and which commands the users had a lot of struggles with, you can iterate on your VUI and you can make it better. Then the fourth point is use conversational language. I mentioned this before. You don't want to have a lot of technical jargon or a lot of technical terminology in your commands, because the user needs to understand where exactly he is heading and where exactly he is on the website. So you want to keep it restricted to layman's language for the best results. Then there's security considerations. So obviously you don't want your users stating private information or any type of harmful information whenever they give in their voice commands. So through some sort of terms agreement or some sort of censorship technology, you can make sure that your users are safe and aren't giving any crucial information that might harm themselves and others. Now, over here, I've given you some tools and techniques through which you can implement speech recognition and voice user capabilities on your own Drupal website. The first thing I want to go over is this web speech API. So this actually is a JavaScript library. And over here, you can actually visit the library's homepage on the MDN. And it gives you an entire, I think, the entire library for download, and it shows you how to use it exactly. If you see over here, they're actually defining the grammar of your website. So as I said before, grammar is the list of commands and the list of words you want your website to recognize. And once you actually set your grammar, you'll be able to use the speech recognition object. Yeah, over here. You'll be able to use the speech recognition object in your JavaScript file, and you'll be able to use the functionality provided by this JavaScript library. I have a small demo over here of an app made with this library. So this is a speech color changer. You can just say the name of the color you want the background to change to, and I think it will change it. So let's just try this out. I need to click on this website, and then it will be able to take in my voice inputs. And let's see if it works. Green. So as you can see, once I clicked on the website, it had started its voice recognition process, and it was ready to receive a color command. After this, I set the name green, and it was able to process it. It converts it to text actually on the back end, and it also gives you a confidence interval based on how likely that specific command was said. Over here, they've also defined what the grammar is of this particular application. So the grammar in this case is just the names of all these colors. So yeah, that's just a short demo of how it works. You can make it more complex by having multi-line commands and commands comprising of multiple words. But you'll have to define that grammar yourself, and you will have to define the functionality yourself using the API. After this, there's also speech recognition services given by like major tech companies. So this would be Google Cloud speech to text. There's also Microsoft Azure speech to text, and there's IBM Watson speech to text. So out of these three, I think Google Cloud speech to text is the most prominent and the most used. So let's just, I've opened a PHP file over here showing how the general process would be if you want to use this Google Cloud speech. So this is just a PHP file. This is the library which inherits from the Google Cloud client. And over here, the project ID is, you will have to actually recognize, you'll have to register with the Google Cloud service, and they'll be able to give you like a secret key or a project ID, which you'll plug in over here. Then you instantiate, one second. Then you instantiate this client speech, and this is inherited directly from this library. You plug in your project ID over here, and you also plug in the specific language you want the recognition to be in. So in this case, it would be English US. So then how you would go about implementing this is that your PHP website would take in the user's input and would store it in a file. And that file name you'll have to give over here, the particular file name you want to transcribe using the library. Then you provide these options, which they've detailed in their API documentation. It's just specifying the encoding and the sample rate hertz. And once the file is downloaded and kept in your main directory, you'll be able to run this recognize method, which is part of the client from the library. Once this is done, it actually transcripts whatever you were saying, and it is stored within this array under the transcript key. And you can loop through, and I think what it does is that it separates the results by line. So I think what it does is that it's able to differentiate the exact sentences you said. And based on sentence by sentence, it can loop through, and it can give you the results sentence by sentence. So that's how mainly you'll be able to implement it in your Drupal PHP website. There isn't a module currently on Drupal.org, unfortunately. I think the latest version of that module is for Drupal 7. So as of right now, there's not a way where it can be implemented in latest Drupal versions, but I think some work is going on upgrading that module. So it will be better if you keep a lookout for it on the future. But as of right now, it's fine to use the Google Cloud library directly through Autoload. Then in talking about the opposite of speech synthesis, there's also text-to-speech, where you would type out a particular text and the system would be able to generate the speech commands on its end. For these, you can use the same service. Google Cloud also provides text-to-speech as well as speech-to-text, so you can use the same thing. And there's also AWS Poly, which is part of Amazon Web Services. Then there's also separate user-made custom JS libraries. There's two of them that I could find. There's Anyang, and there's also Artyom.js. So these would be implemented in the same way you would implement this web speech API. You would include it as a library in your Drupal directory, and you would access the functionality from there. Then talking about voice assistants. So you all would have heard about Amazon Alexa and Google Assistant. So both of these services actually come with their own development kits and their own respective APIs. So if you have access to any of these two services, you can actually implement them in your own website, and you can integrate their functionality in a good way. So coming on to my last point, how do VUIs enhance user experiences? So these 3 points, just as a conclusion, I will say that in terms of accessibility, we'll be able to help users with disabilities, with some motor function impairments and some visual impairments. And overall, it just helps the content consumption in terms of voice. So just not having to rely on the visual aspect of your website, and engaging with all the senses of the user to provide an overall more fulfilling experience. Then there's user engagement. Obviously, if you're able to have a conversation in layman language with the system, and the system is able to recognize your layman language, without having to probe a lot or without you having to use a lot of technical jargon. It provides a more satisfying, a more fulfilling user experience, and users will report a good amount of satisfaction with your application. And overall, also, it helps your UX in terms of efficiency and convenience. The main thing over here is that it obviously aids in hands-free operations. So let's say you're busy working on another thing on your laptop, or let's say you're in the kitchen or you're tending to something else, you'll be able to interact with the application without having to physically be there in front of the screen, physically having to press on your keyboard, and physically not having to press your mouse or click on specific menus or buttons. This provides a novel and engaging experience, and it can help your user satisfaction, and it can help your user interface provide better for your user base. So that's pretty much it for the webinar. Just to conclude, we went through some popular tools and techniques through which you can implement voice user interfaces in your Drupal application. We went through the best practices you need to keep in mind when implementing voice user interfaces in your Drupal application. And we also went through what are voice user interfaces, the difference between speech recognition and natural language processing, and how it can help your site on the basis of accessibility and on the basis of mobile development or mobile responsiveness. So that's pretty much it from my side. That is the end of the webinar. If there are any questions about the webinar, I'd like to take them right now.
Yeah, hi Siddharth, Namrata here.
Yeah, hi Namrata.
Yeah, thank you for the session. Like by any chance, have you implemented any sample of the concept in the Drupal project? Can you show?
As of right now, I didn't have any projects that would require it,
Okay.
but I am doing a project on my own time, which will include such technology. This is my learning so far, and I'm still working on implementing it. But once I do, I'll be able to obviously bring better clarity.
Okay. Thank you, Siddharth.
Yeah, but mostly how it will be done is through either the Google Cloud service or through the JavaScript web speed service.
Okay. Actually, I just wanted to see, like, as you said, there is no module being there for the.
Yeah, that's as of right now, it's not that.
Yeah, like I just wanted to know how it is explicitly implementing these things into the Drupal. I was just
can give you a sort of skeleton. So you saw how it was able to recognize the color command for the background, correct?
Yes, yes.
Right. So that is actually a JavaScript API. So how it will be implemented finally, once a module is made, is that you would include that specific API or that specific library inside your JavaScript like Drupal directory. Like there will be a separate theming folder or something related to that. Yeah. So through that, you will be able to use it exactly like how you would use a normal JavaScript API. That isn't like a big implementation process or anything like that. The main functionality is being provided by JavaScript itself. So you just need to bring those functions to the table.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Siddharth.
Indra, Himanshu, any questions? Salmya?
No, Siddharth, thank you.
Siddharth.
Yeah, Himanshu.
Do you use Google Cloud, any other services like Sheet?
Right. So a long time ago, I used Google Cloud for sign-in. So Gmail sign-in, you can say.
Okay.
But I haven't used it for voice recognition yet.
Okay.
Like how Google Cloud usually works is that like you will register your application on the website and they'll provide you with a key and a password. And through that, you will be able to access whatever functionality you want. There are some specific functionality which I think requires payment, but that might have changed. I haven't checked it recently.
Oh, okay, thanks.
So Velanki has commented over here. Is Drupal a KG based CMS? Can you clarify what you mean by KG? What use cases would Drupal be more suitable for? So this is just like a general question you're asking, I guess, about Drupal. Drupal is more suitable for like custom functionality, I could say. It would be more suited like if you have specific plugins or if you have specific modules that you want to separate your site into. I think Drupal would be more suitable for. The voice interactions are through Google or AWS services, then what is the role of Drupal? So Drupal is the main like wrapper, you could say, which wraps all these services together. Drupal is like, it's a CMS which aids in web development, correct? So you can create websites and you can create applications through it. You would want to include those Google and AWS services inside that wrapper. It's not that Drupal like only provides those services. I'm not sure whether Drupal has search algorithm services. I think there must be some modules for it. Is Drupal a suitable CMS for video streaming services as well? So an important thing to keep in mind is that Drupal, like it has, if you look into its architecture, it has content types and it has like media types and that type of separate thing. So you can actually define, yeah, it is like a website page builder, you could say. So since it has different content types, you can define a separate one for video streaming. I'm sure there's that capability. What is the scalability of Drupal? I'm not sure about the technical specifics, but Drupal is used in websites which have tens and thousands of users. It's used, I think, in websites for the government of India. So yeah, it does have the capability to support a lot of users. So anything else from anyone? Saranya, Saurabh?
Nothing from my side. I have joined the session late.
Oh, okay.
No.
I think a recording will be available after this, so you can.
Yeah. Because you have told that Alexa or any this voice recognition tools, whatever we are using for smart homes, right? Those can
Mhm.
also be implemented using this APIs on a Drupal website, right?
Yeah.
So how do you think what they are going to play on Drupal site?
So I'm talking about the functionality itself, Saranya, the voice recognition functionality and the actual like natural language functionality. Like you can define the functionality by yourself. You can define what exactly you wanted to do, what exactly commands you want. You can define that by yourself. I'm talking about the main, let's say, speech recognition, speech synthesis functionality. For that, you can use the API of, if you own Amazon Alexa or if you own Google Voice, I think they provide you with the ability to integrate. So yeah, you can use their technology to aid your own functionality, you can say.
Okay, so let's consider I'm implementing this voice recognition and an event calendar, and I'm on
Okay.
different time zone. I want to convert the events from one time zone to another time zone.
Okay.
So is it possible with that kind of APIs? I'm saying
Right. Okay. But
change
like,
the time zones to IST like that.
Okay, fine. So like, what commands would you have in mind? Like, what would you want the user to say exactly?
So I'll say get the event from July 1st to 10th and convert the time
Okay.
zone from, I'm seeing the time zone displaying on PST. So I'm saying convert
Okay.
the PST time zone to IST time zone. Is it possible like
Okay.
that?
Yeah, it's definitely possible actually. But what you would have to do is that you would want to make it known to the user that you want to follow this particular format. Okay. So let's say the command would be get all events from X to Y. Right.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
you would want the user to say exactly that. And it like once you recognize the speech, right, you will get the text transcription. So from there,
Mhm.
you'll be able to filter out the date, and from there you can get all the events from your backend or whatever.
Yes, yes.
So yeah, the main limitation of voice user interface is that yeah, the user has to follow some specific like format. But I think slowly with more ML and more AI, I think it's able to take a more like natural role like through data
Mhm.
sets and everything. So, but for now, I think for websites, to make everything as clear as possible and to make like to make sure that there's not a lot of inaccuracies, it's best if you encourage your user to follow this specific format. So like get all events from X to Y and convert to X time zone.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah.
Uh,
Thank you so much, Siddharth.
yeah, so that like
Yeah.
adding to Sharanya's query, see nowadays the open API, which is in trend now, that converts the voice speech to text conversion and all those things. We have open APIs for
Yeah.
that. Uh, like I think we can implement those APIs to the Drupal platform maybe
Oh
for
yeah,
such scenarios.
definitely. For ChatGPT, right?
Hmm.
I don't have a lot of experience with using the ChatGPT API as a
Mhm.
developer.
Mhm.
But I have seen some projects where they are planning to do it. So, like for the ChatGPT API, is it like fully publicly available? Like you can use all the functionality without payment?
Yeah, actually, no, that is not. We will be able to create only 2 to 3 tokens
Mm-hmm.
for free. After that, we have to pay. There are select set of, a specific amount of keys to be generated as per the plan. So right now they have made free, but later on, I think they might charge. And there are few other than chat GPTs, there are other models where they have been charging and like we need to pay for using them.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was for this particular webinar, I was mostly looking at free options because in my own
Mhm.
project, I don't really want to pay for voice recognition
Yeah.
right now. So
Right.
that's why I suggested Google Cloud and AWS
Mhm.
because they give you like good functionality for the free price. Like there isn't any obvious limitations and you can define your own functionality anyway.
Okay.
So that's why I mentioned that in this webinar. But um, yeah, for our company itself, there was a project where we took the OpenAI API and we made our own version of ChatGPT, correct? And that
Okay.
was in a Drupal wrapper. So
Mhm.
yeah, I'm sure you can, if you want, you can implement it by yourself.
So you wrapped it in the Drupal CMS project?
Yeah, I think that's what Amber did.
Okay. Like if possible, can you have can you give us a session on how that is being implemented?
Yeah, sure. I'm still implementing my own project. So once
Okay.
I get more experience on that, there'll definitely be a follow-up to this.
Yeah, sure.
And like whenever you want, you can always contact me or I think there will be a recording available after this. So if you have any more doubts, you can always contact me in your free time and
Yeah,
I'll be happy to
sure.
explain.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I think that is all for now. Atul, are you there?
Yes, Siddharth.
Yeah, you can stop.
We need to stop recording. Yeah. Thank you for the session. It was
All good.